And it's Energumene opening up a clear advantage in the closing stages. A breath of fresh air over fences is going to stay at the helm of the 2 mile Novices. Energumene by.
Boyle Sports has it all. Money back meetings every day. UK and Irish racing live streaming. Extra places and money back all losers offers. And a bet 10 get 40 welcome offer. Boyle Sports, this is betting.
So, hello and welcome back to episode number 39 of the Champ.ie podcast for the season. Joined once again by Steve Hamilton. Lots to dissect. We're looking ahead to day 2 of the Cheltenham Festival, Steve. And highlight of day 1. How was your day, first of all? And what was the highlight for you?
Played a draw today. Thankfully, there was a couple of horses I fancied, but the prices were just too short for me, so I didn't get involved. It worked out in my favour. The highlight, I think, Constitution Hill continues to be the highlight whenever you see it run. As a racing enthusiast, it was a fantastic day. Having that, and then Honeysuckle, was everybody saying, winning the following race, and what a strong race that was. So, we're gonna do well to live up to that tomorrow. On what we've seen today. But a great day's racing, and as always, it never disappoints, does it?
Absolutely. And of course, Barry Connell with a Cheltenham Festival winner, Michael O'Sullivan with 2 winners. What a day it was. And you kind of thought the ground was potentially gone against Marine National, and to see him come there in the opening race, what a moment that was for Michael O'Sullivan. A big congrats to him. And of course, Barry Connell has said we're going to be looking ahead to the Ballymore, the first race we're going to look at, Steve. And Barry Connell says he's coming for the double. What way do you see the Ballymore on day 2, the opening race of day 2?
Well, all I know, one of the first things I noticed is that after he was interviewed with the winner today, and he was very, very bullish about this particular horse as well. When I looked at this horse a couple of days ago, it was 7-1-ish, 3-1 after that interview. So there's been a massive. The bookmakers have cut that quite significantly. I think it's all to do with that. Maybe they've got running up money. He seemed to say that he had tipped up everybody that would listen, both horses. So maybe that's the case. But what it does do, I think, is push other horses out a bit, which I think on form have probably got a better chance. So when you look at horses such as Hermes Allen now, initially that was a 3-1 chance a week or 2 ago, 5-1. Gaelic Warrior drifted in the market. And the one horse that I must say, it falls into that category of could be anything. After watching that last run at Punchestown, Empire Pass, could be anything, the horse. It travelled so well. I was really impressed with that. But that is market leader. And again, on form actually achieved, you wouldn't say that it's any superior to those other horses I've mentioned. But he does give, when you look at, sometimes you look at a horse and you just think he's one with a great deal in hand and he just looks the part. And this horse, I think, falls into that category.
He really does, and he's been, I suppose, the big talking horse of the preview circuit. And as you quite rightly mentioned, any Goodland fans, maybe getting involved tonight, I maybe might just wait before the off when there's more liquid in the market and you might get a bigger price on Goodland. That's the way I'm going to play this race, because I must say, I am with Goodland. I think he ticks an awful lot of boxes for the race. And if the price is right tomorrow, Stephen, he would definitely be the play in here. I've actually backed him at a bigger price AntePost. I can't see how you won't get bigger tomorrow. And
certainly the price has gone to now. It just seems, as I say, that overreaction, and people wanted to be on no matter what the price was.
Yeah, absolutely. I could see, like in Perry Pass and Goodland, I could see Hermes Allen maybe coming in for a little bit more support tomorrow. I think he's probably the leading British novice hurdler that's going to go to the Cheltenham Festival. The one interesting thing about this particular race is once again the pace angle. We saw horses today that were, ridden from behind the pace come through in the Supreme, for example. I think tomorrow, you mentioned there's another band of rain. It was spilling rain by the final race of the day. The ground is definitely going to be testing once again. Goodland, very straightforward horse. He'll be able to take a lead. He took a lead off We've All Been Caught of course, at the Dublin Racing Festival. And I think the Nathaniel Lacey is probably the best piece of form in here. With the likes of Hermes Allen, he likes to go forward. Gaelic Warrior, he likes to be prominent. Champ Kiley. So I just wonder, would it set it up once again for a closer in the Ballymore? And that horse being, good land. Michael O'Sullivan, his confidence is up. He's rode 2 winners, of course, today as we're speaking. And this particular horse, I love his temperament, and I love the way he jumps. And at the Dublin Racing Festival, the big festival atmosphere didn't seem to phase him. He'll be able to take a lead, and I think he's a massive player. And tomorrow, if you're getting anything in around 4-1, 9-2 tomorrow, closer to race time, I'd be having a good go on Goodland. So anything around that sort of price, I think he's definitely worth a bet. Imperial Pass, just maybe a little bit of a worry. You mentioned he could be anything. He literally could be anything. And they obviously hold him in high regard. He's just a 5-year-old. His jumping was very, very good. I just wonder how good the form is of the Moscow Flyer. And with him, he's had just the 2 starts on the race course. So experience-wise, I think Goodland ticks an awful lot more boxes for the race. I couldn't have Gaelic Warrior, the way he jumps out to his right. He ran a big race in the Boodles last season, and on ratings, he looks the one to beat. But just the way he steps through his races, I wouldn't be backing him.
It's strange with Gaelic Warrior, though, because he's coming off of the back of winning a handicap, which is not that common, but it just proves that he's tried and tested. That jumping right-handed, he seemed to do it more pronounced later in the race. But again, with this yard, with the Mullins yard, it's not that they're going to leave that undone. They will have a look at the horse again and try to correct that. And I suppose you could put a spin on that and say, well, if it does improve, if they can get him jumping straighter, there's every chance it could show a bit more improvement. As always, Barry, as I keep saying, it all comes down to prices. Goodland, the way that was cut, as I say, 3-1 makes no appeal to me whatsoever. But I didn't know how to price it with any great confidence, simply because of Impera Pass being in there. And as I say, it could be anything. The one horse that I think, from the British point of view, that will run its race is Hermes Allen. It will run well. And now at 3-1, again, it made little appeal. At 5-1, I wouldn't say that it. Yeah, I wouldn't say that it's no value at that price. Put it like that. But I must say, in all honesty, I found it extremely difficult to tie in our form with the Irish form. And obviously, these are all lightly raised horses, all capable of improving. And as we've seen today, they can take a massive step forward. So, although a pair of picks I like, at 7-4, well, I'll probably let it pass.
Okay, so horse that most interests you tomorrow, if the price is right.
Hermes Allen.
Hermes Allen. Okay, I'm going to go Goodland. I think you'll probably get 4-1 tomorrow, and I think that's more than fair about Goodland, I should say.
One other thing, Barry. One other thing. Just let me. Your stats, so that's what I meant to ask you on this. Hermes Allen, what we were talking about, is it the stats from the Cello are awful, aren't they? Cello winners coming into this race. I remember you mentioning that to me.
Yeah, I mean, 20 Cello winners have went on to run in the Ballymore, and every one of the 20 have been beaten. So it's not as if I think that's a fairly hefty stat.
It is a hefty stat. And that's why I wouldn't have been back in Hermes Allen at 3-1. And maybe I should be looking at 10-1, you saying that.
My only worry with Hermes Allen is he hasn't actually really got taken on in a race yet. I think Vicky Vale took him on for maybe a moment, shall we say, down the back at Newbury, and she was about 10 wide at the time. She was racing almost on the other course. And just, I don't think he's going to get his own way up front in this contest. And I'd like to see something. And I think Goodland is that something. I think he ticks a lot of boxes. Barry Connell, how bullish is he? I mean, you mentioned, the interview afterwards. He's telling everyone to to back Goodland tomorrow as well, and they're obviously on. And listen, every single chance of pulling the double off, and wish them well tomorrow. Michael O'Sullivan going for a third winner at the Cheltenham Festival. I'm sure he'll have plenty more rides to look forward to right throughout the remainder of the week. Second race, Steve, is of course the Brown Advisory Novice Chase over the 3 miles. We'll be previewing that when we come back.
Download the Boyle Sports app and receive generous offers for new and existing customers. Boyle Sports, this is betting.
Right, Mr. Steve, on to what is the Brown Advisory Novices Chase, and you love your stats. We'll throw a couple into the mix. 13 of the last 16 winners had run at the previous festival. So, 13 of the last 16 winners had run at the previous festival. Don Poley was the only winner this century to only have 2 runs prior. So the real whacker has had 2 runs over fences, maybe a slight stat against him. I really like him, Steve, for this. I really like him. I make this, I was saying, we were talking off air yesterday, and I make him probably the bet of the day tomorrow at the current prices. He's 6-1 at the current prices. He's 2 from 2 at Cheltenham. Absolutely loves the place. I reckon they're scratching the surface with him. Jerry Kalam is going to, the softer the ground, the better his chance. And obviously he is, really testing again tomorrow. But the real whacker is going to love those conditions as well. He caught my eye, Steve, at Carlisle when winning a novice hurdle last season before going on to finish second to Malheur Mission. He was running a cracker today in the National Hunt at Doncaster. That was his hurdles form last season. I was actually interested in looking towards our Albert Bartlett last season, but he's a completely transformed character this season over fences. Easily the best jumper in the field. We have 11 runners, so there's good each-way terms in this particular contest. So I was just a bit worried with the race cut up. Would we get 7 or 6 runners in it? Gerhard for Willie Mullins, he's had 1 run over fences. I mean, that's not exactly an ideal prep. Obviously a point-to-point winner. But I thought that actually stay over hurdles with him. Listening to Robbie Power, speaking on the Boyle Sports Cheltenham preview night, he mentioned one thing about Sir Gerhard. He's 0 scope, very little scope, Sir Gerhard, for a fence, and he landed on the back of one coming up by the stands at Park. So his jumping would have to be a concern. Galia de la Toe, she was rated 125 over hurdles. She's obviously a better chaser. I think she's plenty short in the market. She liked the testing ground. But in terms of, I don't know whether she has the class for this. The real whacker will go out in front. He's going to make it a test. Very strong stare. He liked the ground. And, a lot of people are pointing back, Steve, to his run against Indigo Breeze. And they're kind of throwing stones at him because, Indigo Breeze, in fairness, I don't think would be up to even running in this particular race. But he's come forward no end and dropped back and trip, of course, in graded company at Cheltenham over 2.5 miles. I thought he was very, very good. Pat Neville, the trainer, has spoken about how much he improved from his second run to third run of the season. And I just think he's the best jumper in here. And I think there's every chance he could make all.
That is a very, very cogent argument you put forward, Barry.
Thank you.
It is that it's there. I just feel, first of all, the each way that you were saying, this is got a feel of an each way race. Like you've got 11 runners, but you've got 6 of them that are pretty hard to fancy. So you're left with 5. And I think 4 of those, the form that they've actually achieved would be of a fairly similar level. I don't think there's a great deal to choose between them. Galia des Lateau, who you mentioned, I think her chance really does depend on the ground. She does want heavy ground for her best. Like when she pulled up at Kempton, that was behind Time Hill in that race at Kempton over Christmas. Nothing was forthcoming really about why that was the case, but she came back to form on heavy ground at Warwick last time, where she jumped really well. So if they got a little bit more rain than anticipated and it was really testing, I wouldn't leave her out of the equation. The real whacker itself, in a way, I agree. I've just got this niggling doubt as to whether the horse is actually good enough. it's a, I look at things very in practical terms, objectively, go through the form, facts and figures, but you do get a feel sometimes, and I'm just not sure. I think the horse will run a cracking race, and maybe it's just because it's from a relatively small stable, but I was impressed with the favourite at Sandown over a trip that would have been plenty short enough, Jerry Colomb. I was impressed with that. The horse does stay. He jumps. He's got lots in his favour. What he's not got in his favour is 13-8 price. As I say, that form only ties him with a few of the others. So, although we spoke about this off air, as you say, but the horse at a big price that is, for me, too big is Time Hill. Now, Time Hill was really disappointing on those first 2 chase starts. Jumping wasn't up to scratch. They took him back to Kempton, put the cheek pieces on. The horse jumps. I watched it again last night. I watched it again this morning. Didn't put a foot wrong. It beat McFabulous. McFabulous has subsequently let that form down, and the form is a little bit suspect, I agree. But if the horse produces the level of form, or can produce the level of form it showed over hurdles, over fences, I would say that 10-1 is too big a price in a race such as this. And just at the prices, he would be the one that I would prefer over a couple of the others.
All 22 Cater Star Novice Chase winners to run in the Brown Advisory were beaten. You love these stats.
Love to get the stats turned over.
I suppose the one thing about Tyne Hill, the question with him is, he's not the type of horse, he hasn't improved for a fence. He's probably, not as good a chaser as he was a hurdler. Whereas the likes of, in my view, the likes of Jerry Colomb and the Real Whacker, the sky's the limit with those horses. I think, we were mentioned, and it's a good point you make, is the Real Whacker good enough? He was rated 136 over hurdles, which is a fair, rating for a horse that was, excuse the cliche, Steve, always going to be a chaser. Whereas Jerry Colomb has beaten Ida's Boy by a length in his last novice hurdle. And Ida's Boy is rated 135. So I think on hurdles form, they're quite similar. They definitely have improved for a fence. The best jumper is the Real Whacker. He loves Cheltenham. He's unbeaten there. And the scary thing with him is there's a lot more to come with him. And I've talked myself into this because like yourself, for a long time, I kept staring at this race. And the one question, is he going to be good enough? Well, I think he is, Stephen. I think he's going to win it. So I'd actually make him at 6-1. I cannot see him out of the frame. I think he's going to run an absolute cracker. I think he'll win. So there you go. That's the Brown Advisory.
Download the Boyle Sports app and receive generous offers for new and existing customers. Boyle Sports, this is betting.
On to Steve, what probably is the hardest race of the week to work out. I don't know, have you had a look at the Coral Cup? Big handicap, big field. I'd probably put it between the Coral Cup and the County Hurl as the trickiest race of the entire festival. And we've joint favourites now. Very interesting. Keith Donoghue booked aboard this Captain Combi, who was given £6 by the British handicapper for his most recent start. He finished 6th El Salvador at Punchestown. Dusty Sheehy's horse. I think he's plenty of talent, but he also has plenty of weight in here, I think, for what he's done. We were speaking about the Coral Cup, Steve, on a previous episode, just building up AntePost to Cheltenham. And we gave An Epic Song a shout at 33-1 for a trainer who had faster, slower course. Martin Brazel run a huge race in the Ultimate today. It's obviously Ballymore. The sponsors are going to be there in the refinery. This horse is a big mover. It's into 9-1 with Boyle Sports and is fitted with the tongue strap and cheek pieces on for the first time. Yeah. That's a live player. Is there anything that kind of stood out for you in the Coral?
The only thing that stands out is that you've got 28 runners, of which 16 are Irish. And no matter what our handicapper does when you come over and how he readjusts the weights, it doesn't seem to matter at the moment. There's been a period of time when the Irish horses were, judging on our scale, they always got in light. That's tried to be readjusted over the last couple of seasons, but they still have a significant edge over us as far as handicaps are concerned. And it's one of those races that for me, I talk about ever decreasing circles, and that's what happens when I look at it, because I just don't know where I'm going to get an angle in. The horse that you've just mentioned, though, it is significant. If you want to look at pointers, the tongue tie on, the cheek piece is on for the first time, who the race is sponsored by, all those things come into it. A trainer that knows how to lay a horse out for this particular type of race. But again, you can make that type of argument, I suppose, for half the field. So it makes limited appeal to me from a betting perspective, I'm afraid, Barry.
I have no real strong opinion in this race, Steve, either. And I think it's a really tricky one to work out. There is two that I would mention and that would maybe interest me tomorrow. One being Phil Dore, the top weight here, who was Ben Harvey taking £5 off for Gordon Elliott and Caldwell Construction, of course, who had a winner today at the Cheltenham Festival with Jazzy Matty. And Phil Dore was, of course, beat Sharjah when last seen at Gorham Park in the Red Mills hurdle over 2.5 miles. Ran a cracker last season in the Triumph, was only just run down late against a Vauban, and obviously stepping up in trip over hurdles. Obviously, they tried chasing with Phil Dore. They've gone back over hurdles. He's obviously in good form with himself. He's been given £4, which I don't think I don't think that's, I don't think he's been absolutely hammered by the handicap there.
No.
When you look at the likes of Captain Comby, the British rating that he's got, an Epic Song for me has a lot to prove. Obviously, could be laid out for the race. HMS Seahorse, this has been the target, Steve, for a long time for Paul Nolan. He's plenty short in the market. But the other one I would give a good mention to is Langer Dan for the Skeleton team. Now, if you look back through his form, we've a favourite for the Gold Cup on Friday called Gallopin' the Champ. And obviously 2 seasons ago, Gallopin' the Champ beat Langer Dan by 2.5 lengths in the Martin Pipe off 135. He's just £6 higher. Langer Dan went off favourite for the Martin Pipe last season when brought down, of course, in the race, and won at entry off 137. So I think he could be potentially, laid out for something like the Coral Cup. Thought he'd go for the Martin Pipe personally. He's 10-1. They're trying something maybe a little bit different on a sharper track like the old course. He's the one that interests me the most, Langer Dan. And I know you mentioned the Irish strong hand in this race, but of the runners, he's 10-1. I thought that was more than fair. Steve, we're moving on next to what is the feature on day number 2. It's the ChampionChase, a race that you've been going on about the Irish. Well, the British have a pretty decent record in this. 8 of the last 10 winners have been British changed. Of course, that British trained. And Willie Mullins won this last year for the first time with an Energumene. Yeah,
and this is a race. It's really intriguing. If I start off with Edwardstone. Now, Edwardstone, for me, the performance in the Tingle Creek when it won at Sandown, at the time, I thought this horse has taken another massive step forward. Looked to me as if it improved a stone for that performance. However, subsequent events have shown me that maybe he hadn't, because he beat Grenadine. Grenadine's been ironed out since. And Edwardstone himself came here and got beaten by Editor de G with an Energumene behind. Now, if you take that form at face value, you would have to think, Editor de G, why should Edwardstone turn that form around? Edwardstone had every chance to go past him up the running. I think actually did head Editor de G, but then for me, just curled up a little bit and Editor de G got back up. Looking at that race again, Energumene for me wasn't at all knocked about. He came, I think he was beaten at the last, but he made a mistake at the last. Townend hadn't really gone for him. He hadn't touched him with a stick, and he was very easy on him after they had jumped that final fence. Going back to last year's performance, that I think would set the standard if he can repeat that. And if we can, right. Well, there were 3 horses that, on my figures, that you can find that have performed to a level to win this race. And the 3 are Energumene, Grenadine, and Nube Negra. And both Grenadine and Nube Negra really do have a lot to prove now. They do look to have, certainly over the last couple of runs, Nube Negra last time out at Kempton was really disappointing in conditions that should have suited. And Grenadine, as I say, was really, looked as if it had gone the wrong way last time. So I'm left with Energumene. And I think any further rain obviously will be in Energumene's favour. And now with the doubts I've got over Edwardstone, and I've only got Edwardstone now as a similar horse to Editor de Gite, I think Energumene, you mentioned it to me yesterday, and after looking at the race, I think we could see him come back to his best. And if he comes back to his best, he wins.
Absolutely. We got the Energumene colours on us, Steve, and I think you're absolutely spot on. I think wasn't knocked about, maybe wasn't ridden to best effect, shall we say, last time. Got a sighter at those new white fences as well. And I'd say fitness-wise, he's going to come on. It was always just apparent in the Clarence house that, Paul Townend had him, tucked in behind. He was shifting a little bit out to his right, but he does that. It's nothing major, in terms of, people have questioned his jumping. He was jumping into the back of horses. They probably didn't go hard enough for him. And I just think with an Energumene, he doesn't have to make the running, but I think there's a certain point in the race when he needs to, play to his strengths, which is, that big, massive stride he has and putting horses under pressure with his jumping. I don't think he ever got an opportunity to do that in the Clarence house. And I just think, given maybe a little bit more of a forceful ride, from 5-4 out in the ChampionChase on a tighter track, which is the old course as well. I think that's going to play more to his strengths. And you mentioned the rain. I mean, that's a massive plus. The rain, if the rain comes again tomorrow, he's going to go off favoured. I could see him going off favoured regardless. If the ground is, it's soft ground and it's going to be testing, which is going to play, to his strengths. I don't see anything but an Energumene victory in here. He's the best horse in the race. If he runs his race, and at the current odds, I think there's juice in that. I mean, he's second favourite currently with Boyle Sports at 13-8. They'll flip-flop, and I think he'll win. So, Energumene, mentioned Real Whacker as, at the price is probably the each-way bet of the day. For me, Energumene is the nap of the day. So that's the way I see it.
Right. Well, I'll not disagree with that. It is with every argument I make for a chance of a horse, I will always put a negative, and the negative is he does have to come back from what was, on the face of it, a disappointing performance at Cheltenham. But as we've just said, if you look at that race, if anybody wants to look at that race, you can see that the jockey wasn't overly hard, and you would assume that this would have been the target. And you can see that form being reversed. And it's not, I don't think you need a great deal of imagination to think that it could turn that form around. It's interesting. Connections of Editor de Gite, they must think, well, we've beaten those two. They are a much bigger price than both Edwardstone and Energumene. And yet they've finished in front of those two horses. But as I say, I rated that race through Editor de Gite, and that performance is quite significantly below what Energumene is capable of doing.
Cross country time. Have you a strong opinion, or have you any opinion on the cross country chase, which is
as a punting medium? As a punting medium, they make very little appeal to me, simply because there's not enough of them, and so you don't have time to. The form doesn't balance out. If you had 5 or 6 races, cross-country races a week, it'd make a difference, but they're every now and again. When I looked through, though, the horse that struck me just looking through the card was Galvin, thinking, well, this was a really decent horse, trained by Gordon Elliott, who's also got the favourite Delta Work. And they look, to me, to be better horses than the opposition. This is a non-handicap. The previous cross-country races at Cheltenham that you've had earlier in the season have been handicaps where Delta Work was giving chunks of weight away. Back on level terms, I think he finished behind back on the lash, didn't he? Earlier in the handicap, but at the revised weights, I'd be a little, as I say, I've not done it in detail. I've not been able to price it, but looking at those two and the ability that they've got, I would be slightly surprised if he doesn't come away with a prize.
Yeah, interesting. Just one thing, obviously the Energumene Delta Work double was the feature at Cheltenham last year, was heavy ground. Delta Work and Tiger Roll were the big two, of course, going for the race last year. They've come 21 lengths clear of the third. So I do think it's between the two. Delta Work for me ran a big trial at Cheltenham, conceding weight, of course, on trials day. The ground is probably coming more in his favour than Galvin. He's more experienced over the cross country circuit than Galvin. And I just probably think he's the most likely winner. Is it a major strong opinion? Is it a betting medium for me? No. If you could put the gun to the head, Steve, Delta Work, I think might just come out on top tomorrow in the cross country. 450 at Cheltenham is the next to the handicaps. 20 runners in total. Your favourite currently for Gordon Elliott, JP McManus and Mark Walsh. 11-2, but Andy Dufresne. And we mentioned tongue straps, blinkers, cheek pieces. He has the tongue strap on for the first time. But for me, I just think he's keeping the weight down for the other, Steve.
Well, it did come to mind thinking that Andy Dufresne, if you've not won your money by this race, you'd need to have the intuition of Andy Dufresne to get out of jail in this race, because it looks absolutely wide open to me again. The two UK horses that I like, Third Time Lucky and Alexa de Nuts, both of those, that they are what they are. Though I don't think there's any hidden improvement to come from them, and it could just be though that may be good enough for those two to figure. But I'm very, very frightened of the Irish Challenge. Limited numbers though, Barry. You've only got the 4 in this. Sorry, no. Sorry, you got a few down the bottom as well. I beg your pardon. You got a few down the bottom that I highlighted. But I would be surprised if Third Time Lucky and Alexa de Nuts, who are the pick of the UK horses, if they were good enough or well handicapped enough, should I say, to beat some of the Irish challengers.
7 of the last 10 were British trains. That's in your favour. Interesting, 15 of the last 18 winners had run at a previous Cheltenham festival. And one horse that I like, and I'm interested to know your thoughts, or how you stack Tyne White up with the British Challenge. But I give him a live chance tomorrow for Paul Nicholls and Harry Cobden. Nicholls has won this twice in the last decade. It's his only runner in here. Harry Cobden got a great spin, of course, today, and Oscar Elite, which we put forward yesterday, was held up in the contest. And, we mentioned how capable Harry Cobden is over a fence. This Tyne White, I loved what he done fresh at Ascot on his first run of the season, where he beat Frero Bamboo by 4 lengths. Now, Frero Bamboo was third in this particular race last season and doesn't go. He goes for the plate on Thursday. The key for me is with Tyne White is he's coming here fresh. That's the key to the horse. So after maybe didn't run his best race last time back at Ascot, and they've obviously kept him. He's been targeted at this. So Paul Nicholls has said that this has been his target. They're going to go fresh. You're going to have a go with him. And interestingly, Tyne White, as a 5-year-old, ran a cracker in the county hurdle, which was on the new course, more of a stamina test. As a 5-year-old, I think he finished mid-pack the year that Belfast Banter actually won the race, so 2 years ago. Yeah. He's obviously every inch a chaser, jumps very, very well. And I think going left-handed is going to suit him even more. Wouldn't want the ground bottomless now, but I think soft ground, he's won on soft ground in the past. I don't think soft is going to be an issue to him. 14-1 I thought was more than fair. How did you rate Tyne White?
Right, Tyne White with me, I've got slightly below the other two that I'd mentioned, Third Time Lucky and Alexa de Nuts. That's again on my private handicap. But what I would say, and which I remember going back with this horse, you've mentioned about it being fresh, and he stated that in the past, Nichols. And if you look at his record, he does seem to put up those performances after a small absence. So I accept this probably would have been the target, and that's why they're coming here. But I would emphasise what you've just said about the ground. I think he's a horse. He's got a bit of speed about him. He's got a turn of foot. And I think if the ground rides like it did today, I don't think that would be an issue.
I agree.
But if they have any more rain and it becomes that tacky, gluey ground, because they're going to go a hell of a pace here, they do need to get up the hill. And that would be a slight reservation with me. But I do accept your argument with him. And the big plus is, he's coming here a fresh horse targeted at the race. So that great. But again, it's just the way that I work is trying to put a price on his chance. When I try to compare it to the other horses, I would find extremely difficult. But at a double figure price, you say, I think he's 14-1. I certainly wouldn't say to you, don't back him.
So of the two that you like, would you go Third Time Lucky or Elixir de Nuts at the current prices?
Elixir de Nuts. I would marginally favour Elixir de Nuts. I think the conditions should be fine for him.
Yeah, and he's a horse that is he proven over further, but certainly more of a stamina test. If the ground is testing, that's probably a plus for him, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely. Interesting. I'd agree with everything you said there. About time White. If the ground did get more testing, it would certainly be a negative. But if it rides like it did today, we're going to go with Time White at 14-1. Right, on to the Champion Bumper. And if you thought the Boodles was hard to work out today, I'd imagine you probably don't have that strong an opinion on the bumper, Steve, do you?
Oh, good God. It's I did watch the at the Dublin Festival, the Leopardstown bumper. I watched that, and the winner was pretty impressive, wasn't it? A Dream to Share. Yeah. And then apparently being bought by a JP, I think is what I've read somewhere. And then the other, just looking through that race has got a very good record, a good point of coming into the Champion Bumper. So all that looks very good. But there were a number of horses that are reopposed today that weren't that far behind it. And I do think we saw it today in the Novices, a different day, that run behind them. This is the target. They can easily step forward 5 to 10 lengths on what they achieved then. So at 4-1, I think A Dream to Shine. It doesn't make any appeal to me to back it, but put it like this, I certainly wouldn't lay it. And but I just find them fascinating races. Again, as a racing enthusiast, I love looking at the bumpers. Even going back when bumpers were first introduced, I used to love just staying, always the last race, watch them, because you got a great feel for what a horse was capable of going forward. And this is it. You've had some excellent horses win this Champion Bumper, and it's always a strong pointer to the novice hurdles next season. So if you're not having a bet in it, watch it though. There will be some good horses performing, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. It's never for me the biggest betting race that I want to get stuck into, albeit I do think it's an open bumper, and you could see something. I'm not sure if there's a real star at the front of the market. A Dream to Share obviously was very impressive at Leopardstown. It showed a very nice turn of foot. The ground was obviously nicer at Leopardstown than what it's going to be tomorrow. So that brings, I think, the two of them closer together once again. Fact to Foil, obviously, Patrick Mullins has won the race, Steve, on 3 occasions. So he's going for his 4th win in the Champion Bumper. Fact to Foil, if you're talking about horses staying the trip, if he's on the premises, he's going to come home hard. He's a 6-year-old, he's a strong horse. Patrick Mullins, the vibes, you just got the feeling on the preview circuit, the vibes you were getting about Fact to Foil, and it's for me that he was going to choose Fact to Foil. He has to reverse the form with the favourite, A Dream to Share. There's so many chances in here. Gordon Elliott's top chance in here, Better Days Ahead, the choice Jamie Codd. If there was a horse, maybe that's too big in price, possibly it's him. I thought he was very, very good at Fairyhouse when winning. Now, obviously, he's been kept back for this. We haven't seen him since. It was before the turn of the year. Went for a big fee after winning this point. He's the son of Milan. He's not going to mind the conditions. And I think he's a classy sort. So 12-1, I could see him going off a lot shorter, Steve. But the other one I really liked, and experience a worry, and also it would be a concern as to whether this horse actually keeps his head in Cheltenham, because he done so much wrong. The horse is Westport Cove. He's 25-1. Danny Mullins takes the ride for Willie tomorrow. A son of Mutamir has had just one start, one at Fairyhouse, beat Faulty by 3 lengths. But there's not a horse in this bumper that did as much wrong as him and still won a race leading up to the Cheltenham Festival. He done so much wrong and still won. I'd say he's a horse with a lot of talent. And if he could keep his head, and, obviously we don't know. He's had one start on the race course. This horse could outrun his odds at 25-1. So if you were to ask me for maybe an each way bet in the race, Steve, which I know you're not going to, 25-1, Westport Cove would be a horse I think could possibly outrun his odds if everything goes to plan for him tomorrow. A dream to share, or not a dream to share, better days ahead for Gordon Elliott. I could see him going off a lot shorter than his current price, and I'd also give him a chance. But I think Westport Cove is a horse with a lot of talent. So Danny Mullins on board for the bumper tomorrow, Steve. That's the preview of day 2 of the Cheltenham Festival. Horse you're most looking forward to seeing tomorrow, Nap, and maybe next best at the current prices?
I think Energumene will probably win. So I certainly wouldn't put anybody off Energumene. I do agree with you. Certainly if we have any further rain, I could see him being favourite. I can certainly see that happening. And now just at the prices, I think Time Hill in the Brown Advisory, the 210, at 10-1, I think that for me is overpriced. And I would, I think he'll run a race at 10-1.
Interesting. I think Energumene will win. I'll agree with you on that. So we'll double nap him. And I think each way at the prices, considering we have 3 places at the moment, and we'll still have 3 places tomorrow. The race hasn't cut up. I think the real whacker at 6-1 each way is a solid bet. I don't have a massive fancy in the handicap, but I would obviously give Time White a chance each way in the Grand Annual, provided it doesn't turn up anyway heavy tomorrow. I think he's a live chance. But your Elixir the Nut shout is fascinating. Runner Groom put him up on the Road to Cheltenham Challenge as one of his picks. And just speaking of AntePost, Steve, today an absolute nightmare. 3 seconds on our AntePost challenge. Biker was tipped up to 10-1. That was second. Chemical Energy 9-1. That was second. And Love Enva 11-2. Obviously it went off 11-1. So there's 11-2. I thought was a fair price at the time. The ground came up soft, and I was very disappointed to see her getting beat. I thought Love Envoy had it turning in. Did you?
I did. I did. It got a really positive ride. Got a cracking ride. I thought Love Envoy.
She did. Yeah.
And yeah, just basically it was the better horse on the day that beat her. But Love Envoy is certainly a horse that's going to go forward, isn't it? Relatively lightly raced still.
She loves her racing. She really loves her racing.
And what she got beaten by? She's gotten beaten by a horse that's won. I don't know. It's won more races than the years I've been born, I think, Honeysuckle. So, that was a cracking performance with Love Envoy. So, were none of those AntePosts each way, Barry?
No, on the nose.
Right. So basically, my view of that would be you're in form. You're in form just to get touched off in races as competitive as they are and the prices that you're backing at. It's different if you're backing 6-4 even money chances and you get 3 or 4 of them finish second. That does some damage.
I also backed Envoy.
But the prices you're backing at, you only want one winner.
I also backed Love Envoy today each way. So I was, I couldn't believe when she was 11-1, considering the ground conditions. And when I saw Johnny lining up in front, he went out to bounce out, and very nearly made all. I thought it was a cracking ride, like you say, and very unlucky to be run down. And she's a mare. She's a smart mare. There's more to come from her. So cannot wait to look at day 3, Steve. I can't wait to get your thoughts on Mighty Potter tomorrow, because I think that's my banker entire meeting. So we'll come back tomorrow. We'll discuss day number 3 at the Cheltenham Festival. Wish you luck for tomorrow, and all aboard Energumene, Steve.
Cheers.
Download the Boyle Sports app and receive generous offers for new and existing customers. Boyle Sports, this is betting.